Welcome back to the BBX podcast called Resist Amazon ? Danny Caine interviewed by the ignorant, cynical person. This is the third and the last of 3 episodes, and today we discuss with our guests Danny Caine and Fede Sanchez which legislation exists to protect the book industry and if it really makes a difference. Let's continue where we left off last time. I hope you enjoyed the broadcast. And that brings us actually perfect at the third topic of this podcast, because if we are serious about protecting books and about bookstores, then for me, it's not only the product. It's about how do you get access to information in a community? Yeah? How do you get access to a diversity of information in a community? How do you get access to information without being profiled, if you don't want to, where your data is used for advertisement and for other purposes and sold? Because we all know in the digital world, we are the product. And I am the product too. And I enjoy the benefits of it, but I know there's downsides as well. And I'm worried about my privacy, which is, I think, a human right. So I look more from that perspective. And while we had the BBX podcast with Richard Ovenden, director of the Oxford Library, he really had a very important argument to say the underfunding of libraries, which is another source to get access to diversity of information, really undermines even the democracy, because people do not have access anymore to all opinions. And for me, bookstores are in that same category. It's about how does a community have access to information. And when Fede and I were, every week we have our meeting among ourselves, and he was telling me a lot about legislation that is in place because societies are realizing that the bookstores are more than just a product. Mm-hmm. But Fede, can you enlighten us a bit on what's going on in terms of legislation, and is it really working also? What do you think?
Danny, in your book, it caught my attention that very often you did speak about legislation and said that the legislation might be the only way to level the playing field. I want to get your opinion on this, and I'll throw in something cynical in it too. France, actually, you mentioned it before, books are one of the rare products in the world that have the price printed on the product itself. Like sometimes we don't even realize this, but the price is there. So many countries, including France is a great role model, have enacted a fixed price legislation where giant discount stores or where online retailers are not allowed by law to discount books more than X%. France does not allow more than 5% discount, and this discount extends to Amazon. In France, Amazon cannot sell a book for more than 5% discount or ship it for free. It has to apply to one or the other. And France has gone even further. In Paris, they're appropriating locations, in prime locations, and reserving these locations at fair rents for booksellers and local and artisan business. Is this legislation working? And if it is, Danny, why, cynically speaking, should it not apply to shoes, to electronics, or any other products? Why books and booksellers?
Well, that's a good question. And it's, I think it's working. If you walk around Paris, there's just an abundance of beautiful bookstores. I was just talking to my wife last night, trying to figure out what my favorite bookstore in the world is. What would I say the best bookstore in the world is? And I would argue it's Shakespeare and Company in Paris. It's a gorgeous place. It's just, they do everything right there. And it's
I thought the best one was the Raven bookstore.
Well, it makes me sound a little conceited.
After Raven. After
Raven. So, but it's like Paris has thought about what makes Paris Paris, and like the thing that's the best about Paris is their culture, is the arts. It's a city that just bursts with art, and part of that is books. It's the investing in the culture of your country, and so books, as opposed to shoes or iPhones or whatever else, are pushing the culture forward, are creating the history and the cultural heritage of a society. And like if the government is willing to give museums funding, it's just putting bookstores in the same category as art. Like, I think a lot of people would argue that the government has a role in preserving the artistic and cultural heritage of the country. And I think books and bookstores are part of that. And that's what makes a book different than a pair of shoes. So it's just investing in the cultural heritage and legacy of the country, of a region, of an area. And so I think that's why it's important to protect books. And then it's like a better informed constituents are better for democracy. That's written into the Constitution. It's just the idea that the well-informed and well-educated constituents make a healthier democracy. I think that idea is pretty strong. And what better way to create an informed citizenship than with like ready access to books and bookstores.
But Danny, is this a necessity in your opinion? Should governments intervene and elevate books and booksellers to the status of cultural assets that need legislative protection? Is it a necessity?
Well, if they're going to go extinct because of the size of big tech companies and these monopolies, I think they need to be protected somehow. And so I think one way to do it would be to proactively protect books and bookstores. I think in the United States, that's probably a pretty uphill battle. It's definitely a different place than Paris. And then another way to do it is to legislate against and regulate the big companies. And I think that's a more likely bet here in the US. You see France doing it both ways. Because like there's the discount law, which is kind of targeted at the big retailers, and then you've got the bookstores in Paris getting the spots and the subsidies. So it's like you are proactive and reactive, and I think the reactive legislation has a better chance in the United States, just because it's like it can be a hard sell, just not even bookstores, just to get governments to support arts. Like here in Kansas, they dissolved the Kansas Creative Arts Commission. So for a while in the state, there was no state-funded agency working on the arts and culture in Kansas. So yeah, I think there are a couple ways to do it. People here really love the idea of free market capitalism, and if you kind of couch it as protecting competition and making sure anybody can compete on the fair market, I think that's an easier sell in the United States.
In Quebec, even and Danny, we have two interesting laws very quickly. There's two sales taxes. There's a provincial sales tax and a federal sales tax. In Quebec, the provincial sales tax, which is almost 10% of the price, does not apply to books. That is by law. So the only tax that applies to books is the 5% federal tax. And there's an incredible law. It's called La Loi du Livre, the law of the book. And this law obliges all public libraries and all public institutions that are funded by the government to purchase their books from bookstores that have an address in Quebec at retail prices. And it became so important that during the entire pandemic, there's some independent booksellers whose business was 80% selling to public libraries.
I believe it. Yeah, I would welcome both of those in the United States. I'm not sure if it would happen, but I wouldn't complain.
But I think it's an important part of the story here about how can we make sure the book industry gets stronger again, and especially the independent bookstores. If I look on Wikipedia, then and I type in fixed book price, there's this interesting graph. It's a world map, and it shows the countries with book prices fixed by law. But then there's a second category, countries with book prices fixed by business. So apparently some areas in the world are not waiting for the government to act, but they organize themselves, which is of course also a very smart way. All right.
Well, okay. Are we at time?
No, go ahead.
Okay. There's I think the big legal concern in the United States is because like Amazon, at least here, and I would argue everywhere, is more than books. And so like it's important to protect the book industry, and Amazon is the biggest threat from the book industry. But the problem with Amazon is books, yes, but also privacy and data and anti-competitive practices. And so I think my main legislative priority is breaking Amazon up into more reasonable sizes to break their power a little bit. And I think there are laws on the books in the United States. If they were vigorously enforced, you could do that already. Like, it's not even an issue of new legislation. Like, we have laws on the books that make predatory pricing illegal. That, you know, these antitrust laws are there, but they've been really loosely enforced for a couple decades now. And hopefully we can get some momentum to get people to look at these laws seriously and take action against Amazon. I think the book industry will kind of thrive as a result of that, but it's also so important for so many other reasons. It's not just about books here. It's more than books.
Okay. Before I'm going to say goodbye to both of you, because I'm a bit aware of time, you have the last word, Danny. If you, we talked about Amazon, we talked about independent bookstore, we talked about legislation of the books industry. What do you want people to take away from this discussion?
I think just you can tell the health of a community from the health of its independent bookstore. And a bookstore is so vital to the people that live near it and its customers and its friends. And so I think it's really smart for a community to take care of its independent bookstore, because they'll get a lot of returns, even more than a house filled with good books. That community will be healthier for the health of its independent bookstore.
Very nice. And you will be pleased to hear that during the pandemic, during the lockdowns in Belgium, books were seen as an essential service. So bookstores were still open. I was, of course, very happy to have that privilege. Okay, so I want to thank you both very much for being a guest at Bold Books and Bones. And a special thank you, Danny, for enduring all that cynical and ignorant questions. But I thank also the Bold Books and Bones audience for sending us these nice questions and these provocative questions. But I also I wish you a lot of success, Fede, you with your endeavors to help bookstores and businesses become more prosperous, and Danny, you with your mission. And thank you very, very much for writing such an informative book. For me, it was an eye-opener, to say the least. So thank you very much. Now, if you're interested in Danny's vision, in Danny's mission, he's from the Raven Bookstore in Kansas, but he has two writings. One is a zine, and the other one is a book. And if you look at the screen, you can see what the difference is. One is about 20 pages, the other is more than 100 pages. One is from 2019, this is the zine, and the other one is from 2021. And additionally, Danny was recently featured in a very nice article in the New Yorker, and they even made a very cool drawing of you in front of your store. I also recommend that very informative article as well. Now, Danny, very quickly, what would you advise? Where should people, if they're interested in your book, where should they buy it? What would be your advice?
Buy it from a bookstore. Buy it from a small bookstore. We do international shipping, but if you're outside of the US, it's probably cheaper to find a place near you to get that book. I imagine your friends in France have the book. The book is all over the world. It's been really fun to see it pop up everywhere. So just ask your local bookstore about it. I'm sure they'd be happy to sell it to you.
Yeah, I will definitely also share the publishing information on the comment section. So thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you.
And you're very welcome. And for the Bold Books and Bones community, please stay curious, stay free, and hope to see you again at the next Bold Books and Bones episode. Bye, everybody.